There are many fables, myths, and tales about the Knights of St. John. We have carried out extensive research to give you a true, unique insight into the history of the Knights. The Knights Hospitaliers of the Sovereign Order of St. John was founded in Jerusalem in 1080 by the Blessed Gerard. The order's sole purpose was to care for the sick, caring for pilgrims in Jerusalem, but the order soon extended to providing pilgrims with armed escorts. During the First Crusade in 1099, the order became a religious military order, and in 1113, Pope Paschal II confirmed the order into the Roman Catholic Church with the issuing of a papal bull. A papal bull is an official document from the Pope, identified by its metal seal, issued only for formal or solemn occasions. The Knights Hospitaliers were made up of monks that also had military duties. Recruitment was made throughout the Christian Empire, from France, Italy, Germany, England, Aragon, Auvergne, Provence, and Castile. Those seeking admittance were to take vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty. The Knights Hospitaliers was not the sole organization to be elevated to a regular order of the Church. Knights Templar and the Teutonic Knights were two other institutions which received this same privilege. One of these privileges was that the Knights were exempt from all authority, save that of the Pope. In 1248, Pope Innocent IV approved a standard military dress to wear during battle. A red surcoat replaced a closed cape, which restricted movement during battle. The rising power of Islam eventually expelled the Knights from Jerusalem in 1291, and they initially found salvation in the Kingdom of Cyprus. However, they soon found themselves embroiled in Cypriot politics, and Grand Master Guillaume de Villeray created a plan to acquire their own domain and chose the island of Rhodes as their destination. However, Guillaume de Villeray did not live to execute his plan to adopt Rhodes as their new home. This fell to his successor, Fawkes de Villeray, who, in 1309, after 2 years of campaigning, managed to get Rhodes and a number of surrounding islands to surrender to the Knights. Rhodes became a Garden of Eden for the Knights, with fertile plains, mild climate, and an abundant water supply. Its location also allowed them to attack Muslim ships easily. These harassments led to many revenge attacks, and Rhodes was besieged on a regular basis. In June 1522, the Knights faced their biggest challenge for Rhodes: 400 ships under the command of Mustafa Pasha, and Suleiman the Magnificent delivered 100,000 men to the island. The battle for Rhodes lasted 6 months. In the December, with both sides exhausted, Suleiman the Magnificent offered a peace deal. As it was only a matter of time before the island was overcome, Grand Master Villiers de l'Isle-Adam decided to negotiate. Suleiman offered a surprisingly good deal, whereby the Knights were given 12 days to leave the island, and allowed each of them to take their weapons, valuables, and any religious artifacts in return for an agreement that the Knights would stop attacking Muslim ships. After their expulsion from Rhodes, the Knights roamed the Mediterranean for around 7 years, searching for a new base from which to operate. Charles V, King of Sicily, decided to give them Malta, Gozo, and Tripoli, in exchange for an annual fee of 1 Maltese falcon. This was to be delivered to the Viceroy of Sicily on All Souls' Day. The Knights initially rejected the idea, as Malta was deemed not good enough after their stay in Rhodes. Malta was described as merely a rock of soft sandstone with no water, fertile plains, or fortifications. However, it was soon realized they had little or no choice but to embrace Malta as their new home. The Knights began to settle and started building new fortifications. Once relatively content with their new homes, The Knights soon reneged on their promise made in Rhodes and started plundering Muslim ships once again. The legendary Turkish leader Dragut was proving to be one of the biggest threats to the Christian nation, and once again he put the Knights Hospitaliers to the test in 1551. Dragut decided that he was going to take the island of Malta and set about this with around 10,000 men. However, he soon realized the task set before him was too great and turned his attention to Malta's sister island of Gozo. After a short time, the Turks entered the citadel and took the entire population of Gozo into captivity, which at the time was around 5,000. Expecting another invasion, Grand Master Juan de Jomedes ordered the strengthening of Fort St. Angelo and the construction of two new forts, Fort St. Michael and Fort St. Elmo. These two new forts were built in a remarkable 6 months, and all three forts were to play a crucial role in what lay ahead. With the death of Grand Master de Seigle in 1557, Jean Parisot de Valette was elected as Grand Master. De Valette was a courageous warrior and was held in high regard. He continued, in earnest, attacks on Muslim ships, taking high-ranking prisoners, including those close to Suleiman the Magnificent. Once again, the Knights were proving to be a thorn in the side of Suleiman, and in 1564 he resolved to wipe the Knights off the face of the earth. De Valette had a new network of spies that informed him of imminent attacks. So, in early 1565, he went about laying in stores and refining the three forts of St. Elmo, St. Michael, and St. Angelo. At the end of March 1565, the largest ever armada set sail from Constantinople. Consisting of around 30,000 men, Suleiman was serious to his word. De Valette pulled together as many men as he could, including locals who were unschooled in the use of arms, and still, the defenders only totaled 8,000. The armada arrived on the 18th of May, and, after some initial confusion, the Turks attacked, initially concentrating their efforts on Fort St. Elmo. This would later prove to be a crucial mistake. De Valette ordered the defenders of St. Elmo to fight to the last, but by 5th of June, mutiny was looming. However, the garrison held on, repulsing numerous more assaults. Finally, Fort St. Elmo was taken on June 23rd, but the price the Turks had paid was high. Over 4,000 men, including that of the legendary Dragut. However high the price they had paid for St. Elmo, there was no intention of giving up, and the Turks set about beheading the Knights and floating their headless bodies across the bay on homemade crucifixes. In response, De Valette had all Turkish prisoners decapitated and had their heads fired from cannons into the Turkish camp. The siege of Malta continued, and by September the weather was turning. A march on Mdina was ordered by Mustafa Pasha. However, his troops did not have the heart, and the attack never occurred. The day before, reinforcements arrived in the form of the Grand Soccorso, led by Don Garcia. As the Knights headed inland, they saw the retreating Turks approaching with burning villages in their wake. The new force charged, which led to a massacre of the Turks. All surviving Turks fled to their ships, and on the 11th of September, the Knights and Malta had managed to withstand a siege of more than 4 months in the hot summer, despite enduring a bombardment of 130,000 cannonballs. They had survived the Turkish assault. Throughout Europe, the epic battle's success was celebrated, and funding came flooding in from all corners of Europe and the Christian nation. During the next 250 years, the Knights brought relative peace and prosperity to Malta, building hospitals, churches, and reinforcing defence systems and fortresses. One of the first projects undertaken after the siege was the building of a great city on what was known as the Sybaris Peninsula. De Valette, in conjunction with the famous architect Francesco Laparelli, designed a grand city which would further enhance the defence systems already in place and serve as the main city. Unfortunately, De Valette did not live to see his city completed, and the responsibility of completing the task was left to his successor, Pietro del Monte. Del Monte immediately ordered the main hospital and convent be moved from Birgu to Valletta and ensured formidable fortifications were built. Maltese architect Girolamo Cassar was responsible for many of the palaces in Valletta and was also tasked with the new co-cathedral, dedicated to St. John, the patron saint of the order. Although the Knights were now infamous for their battles, their main priority still lay with caring for the sick. This is evident in the Sacra Infermia, or Sacred Hospital, which soon had a reputation for being one of the finest hospitals in the world, and Maltese surgeons like Michael Grima gained international recognition for their work. Continued works on the defensive infrastructure of the islands resulted in the redesigning of Fort St. Elmo into the shape of a star, the building of the Cittadella in Gozo, which was the old city on the island, the reconstruction of Cotonero lines, a line of fortifications around the three cities. Also, Fort Chombra was started in Gozo, but only the outer walls were ever built, as the fort remained unpopulated. During these times of relative stability, grandmasters started to mix pleasure into their social time, and a number of private hunting lodges, such as Castello da Baroni, soon became weekend hotspots for the grandmasters and the knights. As time passed and villages grew, they vied for the splendour of their churches, many of which can still be seen today with their beautiful Baroque style. A majority of these were built by Lorenzo Gaffa, with one of his more notable works being the Mdina Cathedral. Other huge steps forward for Malta were the building of a university and later a school of mathematics and nautical science. Valletta became well known as a centre for art and culture, and grandmasters themselves were to contribute to the prosperity of Malta from their own pockets. One such example is Alof de Vignecourt, who personally paid to have an aqueduct built to supply Valletta with fresh water. The shipping industry, along with the cotton industry, and farming also helped to stabilise the Maltese economy further. However prosperous the Maltese became under the Knights, they became more and more frustrated with their increasingly philandering ways, and a small uprising in the late 1700s was easily repelled. However, things were to take a turn for the worse, and in 1792, the French Revolution confiscated all possessions in France of the order, with attempts to reignite donations proving futile. Then, on the 9th of June 1798, the fleet of Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the grand harbour of Valletta. Requesting admission onto the island, the Grand Master refused, Bonaparte took this as a personal insult and ordered the invasion of the island. The disembarking French soldiers were faced with little or no opposition, as the various garrisons in the massive fortifications surrendered. After 3 days, a treaty was signed by Grand Master Ferdinand von Hompesch, conceding the islands of Malta to the Republican forces of France. The knights, with a few of their removable objects, sailed ignominiously out of the Grand Harbour. The largest group of the knights, under the leadership of French Prince de Conde, then sailed to Russia and placed themselves under the protection of Tsar Paul I. The relationship between the knights and the Russian Empire were established 100 years prior to their arrival in Russia, when, in 1698, the Russian ambassador, Boris Sheremetev, was received with honor in Valletta, and, although he was of Orthodox faith, he became the first Russian knight. Emperor Paul I was an admirer of the order, and came to their aid after the financial crisis that bestowed them during the French Revolution. On the 29th of November, 1798, a solemn ceremony took place, whereby Paul I assumed the titles Grand Master and Protector of the Order. In 1799, the Order's 3 most holy relics were brought from Malta to St. Petersburg. These included a piece of the Holy Cross, the icon of the Mother of God, and the right hand of St. John the Baptist. Pope VI formally recognized Paul I as a Grand Master of the Order. Paul I gave the Church of St. John the Baptist on St. Petersburg Stone Island to the Knights, and also Vorontsov Palace as their headquarters and base from which to operate. A Maltese chapel was soon built next to the Vorontsov Palace. The order continued to operate into the 19th century, with the last Russian Grand Master being Grand Duke Alexander Mikhailovich Romanov. After the Bolshevik Revolution, the order continued in exile, to resurface again in America. In the 20th century, hospital work, the original role of the Knights, became once again its main concern. In 1976, after various discussions, the Knights decided to re-establish themselves in Malta. The island was once again chosen to be the Knights' headquarters, and in 1991, Castello de Baroni was made available as the Grand Magisterial Chancellery of the Order, seat of the Supreme Council and headquarters for the Grand Master. Castello de Baroni was originally built as a hunting lodge, and the current owners are Prince Grand Master Emeritus, Duke of Mounteside and St. John, Adrian Buzzietta, Dame Marie Angelique Caruana. Today, the Knights Hospitaliers of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Knights of Malta, the Ecumenical Order, are led by Grand Master Nicholas Papanikolaou, and have over 3,000 knights, dames, and volunteers worldwide, who work in the fields of charity, medical, and social welfare care, and provide humanitarian aid in over 32 countries. Important donations made by the order include mobile hospitals to various nations, among them China, Russia and Africa, and a donation of millions in medicine to many countries, including the Republic of Honduras, the Philippines, Guatemala and the Bahamas. The siege of 1565 has made the Knights of Malta famous throughout the world for their chivalry and courage. Today, the Knights, as in the past, still direct their generosity towards helping the sick and poor, irrespective of their religion or culture.